So, hello and welcome to Paula's Run Club. We are on episode 3, Thommo, and we are talking about our beginnings, how we got into running and what it means to us, and inviting along some thoughts from people who guided us along the way. And so we will be chatting to your coach for a good part of your career in Alan Storey, also was team coach for Team GB for quite a long time through kind of, I would guess, the top part of my career, really, from when I kind of really took big strides forward. I remember him being there giving me advice before I went out and failed to break 30 minutes, but came very, very close in Munich in the rain in the European Championships, and also being there to pick up the pieces in Athens and in the build up to Beijing. But being the guy who was giving me the last minute information when I won the World Championships in 2005 as well. So he's been there through the ups and the downs, and I think he is genuinely someone who will not fail to put a smile on people's faces and give a very honest take on where he thinks things are right now. And on that point, I just want to say, everybody who ran in the English Schools Championships at the weekend, I know that we alluded to it last week if you were going to run there. If you did run it, I hope it went well for you. I'm not sure if the Scottish and Welsh and Irish schools are on the same weekend, but if they are, I hope those are going very well as well.
Yeah, very kind of excited about talking to Alan. He means a lot to me as not just a coach, as a person, and he has got a very dry sense of humour, and he has been a massive support, not just physically through running, but emotionally as well. And he's a big part of our family, and just will continue to be a source of someone, a mentor in life. I would use the word life mentor a lot of the time. So looking forward to speaking to him. But before we crack on, how's your calf?
We are getting there slowly. So I had been for a scan a couple of weeks ago, hadn't I? And I talked about that. So in this last week, I actually went and tried PRP, which is platelet-rich plasma treatment. I've never had it before during my career, but apparently it's really good for calf injuries. So I went in, and first thing he did was get on the ultrasound scanner again. And it's like, yep, there's still a pocket of fluid. I'm thinking, oh, damn, I can jump around, I can hop around. I thought I was going to be clear to start running soon, because it actually felt fine, but there was still a pocket. So he did say, you must have done a hell of a job on it when you actually damaged it at the time. So then what they did is they took out some of my blood and they spin it in a centrifuge and they separate the red blood cells. So I went through this traumatic moment. This is from someone who's had anemia at different points during my career. So they spin it round, they take out all those really bright red blood cells and chuck them in the bin. And then they give the white building block cells are what they injected back in then to that pocket of fluid, just to help the body absorb and heal with that. And so I'm able to walk around, feels absolutely fine walking around. I'm able to cross train on it. I guess it's kind of building up gradually again to form of hopping, which I was already doing before. And then hopefully 2-3 weeks getting back to being able to run properly on it. He did say I'd be starting back jogging first and building back to full running in about 3 weeks.
It's amazing what they can do now. I mean, the number of times when I was getting into my career, athletes would talk about how their career were ended by injuries, and there were bad injuries, but actually the information or the knowledge to fix things just wasn't quite there. Medical advances have obviously always kind of helping athletes stay in one piece. I mean, I know I've had injuries, especially an Achilles injury, that if I'd had it 30 years earlier, I wouldn't have been able to have the operation or to keep going. So it is incredible what they can do now to keep people going.
And I think, to be honest, part of it with me is that your healing gets slower as you get older. And I did have that huge, big pocket of fluid in that calf, and it was just taking much, much longer than it should do, I guess, to heal. And I had been being fairly good on it. I guess I hadn't been as diligent as I would have been during my career in terms of in and out of buckets of ice and things like that. But otherwise, I had been being very patient with it. And it's been hard because I think, as we'll talk about with Alan, for me, the best things about running is it is there in your day every day, and you can just kind of drop into it and use it as a decompress, as a stress release, as a way to catch up with friends. So I've been kind of juggling that bit, not being able to do that, and trying to make up for it in the best way possible in other ways.
Would you say, because obviously this episode is a lot about how we got into running and why we love running,
Yeah.
Because when we have Alan on, he's been doing it longer than anyone I know. But how is the thing I'm interested in is how your relationship has evolved with running, because obviously at the beginning, what pulled you in, what kept you there, and even though it's not your career, why you still do it and why you still love it. So that relationship is kind of altered over time.
Yeah,
So what
and
is
it's something that I've chatted about with both of my kids at different points. I remember Isla saying to me, but I don't just love running the way that you do. And I said, but when I started out as a kid, it wasn't necessarily just that I loved it. I did actually really enjoy the way it made me feel, just that feeling of running fast, particularly through the trees or beside the sea. It just really made me feel alive.
Not into the trees, just next to them.
No, just if you feel like you're running faster, if you're running through a forest, don't you feel like you're running faster because the trees are going past you quickly?
No, it's like running in the dark.
Yeah.
That's what we were saying. Yeah, you get that. Yeah, that.
So that part of it, I did just love. But genuinely, what kept me involved and loving it then was a little bit the competitive side of it, and mostly just the fun. And as Jeff said when we had him on last week, my social life was at the athletics club. Some of my best friends are all through running in some way or sport involved in that way, and I think that's really, really strong. It brings you together, and so it's evolved for me from being something that was fun and I just wanted to see how good I could be, to really pushing myself, investing everything in it. And actually sometimes when I didn't particularly want to go out for a run, but I was just doing it because it was eyes on the big picture and everything focused towards trying to do what I could at the championships. And then I had honestly that period of time in 2012 when I couldn't run and I didn't know if I could run again on my foot, which I think for me really brought home to me how much it meant to me by that point, in that I really, really missed it. And it was pretty much impossible to replace with other forms of exercise. And it was really just to work towards that long-term dream goal of being able to run again. And the first time that I still can remember the first time I went out and I was able to run for 30 seconds on and walk for a couple of minutes. And I came back with the biggest smile on my face because suddenly it was possible to get back to running. And I think that helped in terms of not massively missing, once I wasn't competing at the top level, not massively missing the competition side of it, so long as I can get out and run for me and use it for all of those. I mean, I'm not a big yoga person by any means. I wouldn't sit and do meditation, but I do process a lot of thoughts, a lot of emotions, a lot of decisions while I'm running and kind of put the world to rights. And that's what it's become to me now. And I try and match that in different points of cross training at the moment. But I guess by walking out, I can kind of get close to the same thing, and then just gradually build back. And probably, as Alan will might point out later on, I'm not that far away from walking, not being that much different to my running pace. But the pace doesn't matter now. It really is just about going out and using that time just to catch up with friends or just to be in my own headspace for a little bit.
It's funny, like there's lots of things I've found in my life where I've heard quotes and moments and people have said things and I didn't fully appreciate what it meant in that moment. But it sounds like I'm going on a tangent, but I'm not. But there's a scene from Any Given Sunday with Al Pacino doing this Inches speech, and one of the lines he says in this epic kind of film monologue is, in life you only learn how much, it's not exactly word for word, but you when you start losing stuff, that you realise how much you want it. And I felt like
it's never till it's gone that you realise how much it means to you. Exactly.
And I feel that a bit with running, in terms of even when I was trying to be in my elite career, it's when you feel like through injuries you're losing something, and it made me fight for it more because it showed how much I wanted it. And it's like when you get to the injury career and you think, well, I'm not running to be fast anymore, and you think, hang on, I still want that feeling of fitness or whatever the heck it is. And when you start to lose things, that's how much you find within yourself, how much you want it. Because if you really want something badly enough and it's going to be taken away from you, you will fight.
Yeah, and I think that's a key point for anybody listening who's struggling and juggling with injuries at the moment, is just really stay focused on there is some way, a way back to doing that, and keep your eyes on kind of that prize, because it will feel that much sweeter when you get back. And there will be those times when you battle back after an injury where you'll go out for runs on days when you wouldn't have done before. just because you value and appreciate that you have that possibility to go out for the run on that day. Also, don't feel alone. If you're sitting there injured and you look out the window and you see all sorts of people running past that look like they probably should be injured, and it makes you feel really, really left out, because I always think that's the thing you notice the most when you can't run, is everybody else that is running. And it seems like everybody else in the world is able to get out and run apart from you. That's not the case, so hang in there. You will be back running soon.
No, exactly. But shall we speak to Alan? I mean,
Yeah,
I mean, he's got, as his namesake says, Alan Storey, he's got lots of stories.
He does, and he's been there through so much of it. And just before we intro to him, I'd like to kind of touch on a couple of things, because I will ask those of Alan in terms of questions that I'd asked of my coach, in terms of his advice to give to the podcast. And I think his number one on recognising talent was that it isn't about the most naturally talented. It's about the person who looks as though they love it the most, as we've just been talking about, and who will be prepared to work the hardest. And he used to say to me, it's not always about talent per se, it's the talent to work hard that will work out in the long run. And the other thing he used to say he always looked for was somebody who could up it 10% on the day. And he used to say to me, some people, when they get faced with a competition and the nerves kick in, it'll pull the performance down. And other people, those nerves will drive the performance to a better performance. And I think that was something key that really, really stuck with me. Because as an 11-year-old, when someone says that to you, and you start to think, oh, actually, these nerves, this like feeling in my stomach, I can make that into a positive thing. And I can make myself be better because of that. That's something that I use not just in running. I used it for my exams. I use it whenever I'm nervous going into a situation. Think, okay, I'm going to channel these nerves and make sure that they don't take away from my performance. They make it better. So I think that was key advice from Alec. And on that, let's lead into Alan Storey, who coached you through lots of your career and coached you to that Olympic qualification in Kew Gardens that in 2021, when I have to admit I cried as well.
Bless you. Yeah, I was very, very emotional that day. And that's the thing, like sometimes you have moments with someone like him, like a coach, and I know you have had it with Alan directly, where you just don't say anything. You just sit next to each other, or you're on the phone and you just say nothing. You're just there together going, you know, you're feeling the same emotion, and you don't have to say anything other than just be there with each other in that moment, feeling the same, but no words are spoken. It's a very special... takes a very special relationship to get to that point, and Alan is someone that has done that for me. But let's get him on.
So this episode of the Run Club is all about how we got into running, our start into running, and those very special people who guided us through our career. And one of those very special people, I am very glad to say, is joining us today. And it is Thommo's coach and also team coach for a lot of my time when I was with British Athletics and probably at the height of my career. And it is Mr. Alan Storey.
Hi, Alan. How are you? Welcome.
I'm good.
Don't over be enthusiastic about this.
No. Just maximum enthusiasm. That's all you get.
We should clarify at the beginning that one of Alan's provisos for coming on the podcast was that he didn't want to be called an expert. So we're not calling you an expert. We're calling you an expert on Thommo. Is that all right?
Yeah, I had some experience of that last night. Yeah.
Well,
no, but I seriously think it was a lovely thing that you said. You said you just had been learning as you were going through coaching. And for me, that is one of the hallmarks of the best coaches, are the people that are always learning. There's always something more to pick up, and they're always adapting to make things more unique for their athletes. So we're going to start you off with a fairly easy question. And that is one that I also put to my coach, Alex, who sends his best regards, by the way, when I met with him last week for his 90th birthday. So he's a little bit ahead of you. And it was, how do you recognise talent in a youngster in the first place? And his answer kind of revolved around the fact that it isn't always the most naturally talented kid that has everything that's going to make it through to a successful senior.
No, I think when you're looking at kids, almost all of the decision is based on how quickly they run without doing too much training. But that only takes you so far. And there's a huge dropout in the later teens, and people stop running when they start work, and people go to university and find other things to enjoy themselves with. And it's the people who go through from maybe 16, 18 through to their early 20s that actually make the best athletes, or become the best athletes. But to answer the question, you just look at them, the way they run, how much training they're doing, and how well they run. So Thommo there was on teams with Mo when he was a kid, and they travelled the world, going to dubious places, doing despicable things, and enjoying themselves. And they both continued to improve all the way through to their mid-late 20s. But you could see they were both good when they were young, because they were the best in Britain, and they weren't, as you weren't. They weren't training harder than the rest of the kids in their age group. You weren't. When you were world junior cross champion, you were probably only doing 50 miles a week. Is that about right? When you won in Boston,
I wasn't even adding it up, Alan. I was training about 5 days a week, but I wasn't adding it up, to be honest. So it would have been about that, yeah, 5-6 days.
So
a week.
Back then, you'd have been you were guessing, because we didn't have Garmin's and stuff like that, or other brands, because like you were literally going, I ran for an hour and guessing the number of miles you ran in that hour. You didn't really have.
Did you have a little book where you wrote
all the way
numbers
through?
down?
Yeah. No, not then. I didn't. I'd started doing that when journalists started interviewing me after that and asking me how many miles a week I was running. So then I thought, oh, I'd better work it out. So then I had in my training diary. I did have a training diary then, so I've got all my training diaries that I kept. But I only started adding it up when I went to university, and exactly as Thommo said, it was all just done on what pace I thought I was running.
Thommo probably couldn't add his up anyway then. Not certain he can now.
No, but the thing is, when growing up though, as a kid and having obviously Mo and other athletes around, you were kind of searching for answers to questions of what should I be doing, what more could I do. So people like yourself and other athletes that have gone before, you're kind of listening to stories of what they've done. And so I would hear legendary stories of Dave Bedford running 150 miles a week and higher, and you're thinking that's what I need to do. Not that I went out the door to do it, but you slowly realise that actually, not that they weren't doing it, but they were kind of using crude maths of I ran for X amount of time and then had a rough idea what they were doing. Now we're much more precise and can almost, I feel like the knowledge being passed on to kids now is a lot more quantifiable, a lot more precise of what athletes were doing. That my generation have got actual raw data compared to previous. It was sessions. So the roundabout way of getting to a question, Alan, apologies, but you've been around a long time, but you got into running or coaching as a runner first, didn't you? Primarily you had a love for endurance running, right? That was what pulled you in.
Yeah, my dad ran, and he started taking me to the track at Paddington Rec on Sunday mornings when I was 8, 9, 10, and he was there for a couple of hours, and there was nothing for me to do but run around the track. So by the time I was 10, I was like doing as much as and by the time I was 11, 12, I ran my first. I went to a race at St Mary's College with my dad in January 1957, and he was running a 5-mile cross country at St Mary's, and it was cold, so I joined in, and I didn't have a tracksuit, so I just joined in, and he didn't know I was running till he turned round at the halfway point, and there I was coming the other way. So I was running cross country races fairly early, not intentionally, but yeah, by the time I was 12, I was running 5-mile cross countries.
But what did you love about that?
Kept warm. Are you freezing some areas? It was. That was it. You've been there. It's not hot, is it?
No, I know. But with that though, the love for keeping warm, obviously you then moved north, which meant you had to run a lot more to keep warm up.
Yeah,
that was a good move. But did you? Your move to Durham was fueled by running though, right? Wasn't it?
No, it was fueled by the fact I didn't want to live in London for the rest of my born days, and I just wanted to get out. And it was a good time to get out. I headed north instead of south because that's where my family's from. So I ended up in Durham in the late 60s, and there wasn't a running club there. There was by 72 when a couple of boys started Durham City Harriers again, but the only people there to run with were the university, and they were younger and spottier than I was, so I ran with them, and they started asking questions like, well, how many 400 should I do on Thursday? I don't know, but the university had 3 teacher training colleges as part of the university, and they had libraries on exercise with anything you could or need. So I started reading through the exercise physiology that related to running, and just to answer their questions, because I felt like a stupid person otherwise. And suddenly I was
So
coaching.
And did
Sorry?
you must have had a love? You must have had a love for that kind of thirst for understanding. Because obviously, if you're kind of starting to be able to answer the questions, I mean, because that's one of the things when I got to know you and met you was your passion for just constantly just understanding endurance running to its nth degree, and then trying to then find a way to deliver not just a good training package for an athlete, but just to combine the love of it and just help an athlete just enjoy.
So when I started to read this stuff, it explained to me where I'd been going wrong, because by the time I wanted to be as good as I could as a runner, but I wasn't very good. So I just trained harder and harder. And I was always doing far too much training for the event I was supposedly running. I didn't know that because there was no one around to tell me. So you couldn't run a marathon until you were 21. Those were the laws. So like 2 weeks after I'm 21, I'm running my first marathon. And then a year later, I ran London to Brighton, which is 54 miles. So I was 22 then, and that wasn't really the norm. You normally started running those distances. At that time, people were only turning to the marathon when their career on the track was finished. And that's to run an ultra distance before you'd done anything else. That was just considered stupid, and it probably was. But when I started reading through the stuff in the libraries, I could see why things happened, and why they went wrong and why they went right. And it helped me with my own running. Didn't make me much better, but it made me more informed about what I was doing wrong. So yeah, it was interesting, and I enjoyed it. And once I'd sort of then taken some coaching exams, and still playing around with the lads at the university, I ended up with a group of local athletes that were training at Gateshead. So yeah, it wasn't a path I decided to go down. It was one that the university took me down, simply because these young lads were asking me questions that I thought I should be able to answer, and I didn't have a clue. It just exposed my degree of ignorance, which I'm still trying to correct.
Which, as we said, is a great sign as well, but you absolutely did learn from that. So I'm going to ask you a serious question now, Alan. What is it that you love most about coaching and running in general?
I think when you've been involved in running all your life, virtually all of your friends' connections are within the sport, and I go to meetings now in part to watch the athletics, but in part to meet the people who I've known for years, who are now holding stopwatches, leading groups. I mean, I haven't seen Alex and Rosemary for a while, but I'd love to see them, and if I did, it would be hugs, and we'd be reminiscing about walking around a car park in Edmonton, deciding what tactics you were going to use in the World Championship 10,000.
Which didn't work.
Well, you didn't follow the plan, did you? You just went to the front and kept running around the same pace. Somebody had to berate you afterwards until you'd done it wrong, if I remember right. You're smiling, but
Yeah.
yes, you know what I'm saying. You got a rollicking, didn't you?
Yes, but I also gave one back, because
There
at
you
the
go.
end of the day, I do think the
Yeah.
athlete out there needs to decide what they're capable of doing on the day and what they're not capable of doing.
But if you go back,
I just didn't think I had it.
I'm not dwelling on it, Paul. It's gone. It's gone. That championship. I mean, if we just go back to that championship, we sat on the back straight with EPO cheats out signs. You went home.
We
And
did. Alan was one of the artists there.
And we made,
Weren't you?
well, Mark Rowland and I made masks that had your face on, and we put these out of big sheets of paper, and we put them, and we all sat there pretending to be Paula on the back straight. How can you get? Those are memories that you'll die with, aren't they?
But this is the thing, though, because I think that's one of the things that I've loved about athletics is you build a bond with a coach, and obviously for me directly with you and Paula, of it goes beyond. You experience emotions and moments in your life that go beyond just the average friendship, because your emotions become intertwined, and you have moments where you show how much you care for that person, and like it's so much more than just those signs and that putting the mask on. It's like a kindred spirit that you want that athlete to do well, but you also care so much. And I know for you guys, you've been through a lot of moments through, like we have as well, Alan, but also you and Paula. And I think just how that kind of, where that line sort of tilts over from a coach trying to help an athlete run well into the emotional friendship and bond, like for you, Alan, I know is very powerful.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that is hugely admirable. But as you said there, Thommo, the thing that brings us together a lot are those emotions are more exposed because we're probably more exhausted, we're putting more on the line emotionally as well. And is it hard as a coach to kind of tread that line where you have to be a coach hat on, but you also have the emotional side as well? Because I actually think you were really, really good at it. And I can remember times when everything went really well and according to plan, and you were brilliant. And I can remember times when I was at the lowest of the low in Athens, and you were equally brilliant. How easy is it to ride that line emotionally?
I get upset still thinking about Athens. You can probably hear it in your voice now. It wasn't funny. No, it's hard. It's hard. Just trying to get back to normal. It's hard. You wearing the coaching hat and standing by the side of the track or wherever, year in, year out, you understand how much it matters to the athlete in terms of their whole life, in terms of finance. There's lots of things. All of the years and years of effort that have gone in to a performance, and when it goes right, it's very satisfying. When it goes wrong, you have to take your responsibility. Like you can't just have the good bits. There's the bad bits, and the worst bits are sometimes walking around the warm-up track when things have gone wrong. And if you don't care enough, then you shouldn't be in it. And I think because I've been in athletics for a very long time, I'm probably at a stage now where I can only really coach people that I get on with it, and I'm on a sort of I use the term have a relationship. Thommo and I have a relationship, but gladly not the ones that some people might think it is. You're laughing now.
I know, but because I mean, Alan, whenever I've tried to ask advice around coaching myself and towing that line with trying to help the next gen, every time you go back to the same point of, look, Thommo, if you care about the athlete primarily, you're 80-90% of the way there to doing a good job. Because sometimes we can get so obsessed with the finer details and the process, but actually caring is the biggest ingredient to the coach-athlete relationship. And I think I try to let that fuel every decision I make, and you're not. And again, the other line you always say, we're just guessing. And I think accepting the fact you're just trying to guess and the fact you're trying to primarily care, that's a big part of why you've been, I think, so successful, and a big reason why we have such a great bond and a good friendship. Even though I'm not running as much anymore, I know you still joke at me when we do speak about you're running more than me at the moment and probably fitter than me. But I think that's the thing that why I love running, why I love the relationships. It's people like you, well, both of you guys, is the why I've stuck around for as long as I have and done this job done this career for as long as I have. So the way you have been has just, and the way you talk about we go to at the meets and like meet people, is just, it's the beautifulness. It's those moments afterwards where we're all sat together sharing that emotion. When we spoke with Jeff and Susan, with Jake, we're all sharing a common thing.
Yeah, I think if you you have to make lots and lots of decisions coaching, like on a daily basis. how many of this, how many of that. If you make those decisions based on caring about the athlete, you can. It's easy to stick an extra couple of reps on the end of a session, but is that really the right thing? I think that, if anything, the worst feature of all of the coaching throughout my career, if I've had a career, the worst thing is that I've probably been too soft. There were people I should possibly have pushed harder, but didn't, because the harder you go, the greater the risk, and it's not just an arithmetic progression; it's a geometric, or whatever the term is. It gets like add a couple of reps on the end, and you're doubling the stress of the session. I mean,
I would argue, Alan, that's not been soft. That's not been soft.
Well,
That's been a strong coach and a smart coach,
okay.
I think.
Well, yeah, but
No? I mean, I think there's plenty, I can think of plenty of times when Alec as well would say, right, okay, that's it, that's enough. Because you've beaten all the times that I'd set and you're running fast enough, you don't need to keep adding more. It's like you just said, the risk becomes greater than the potential reward. And yes, you could keep going, but you might end up injured.
you'll have watched Liz Yelling train, and she always ran ridiculously hard in training. And I didn't coach her, but the only observation I ever made was that I thought she went too hard, and she was too hard on herself, and she took it on board for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then just got back on doing what she was doing before, as you would expect, because she was a very determined lass. I couldn't have set the volumes and intensity of training that Mo did when he left the UK, because if he'd been doing it here, I would have, and I'd set that workload. I'm sure he would have broken down. We all have to guesstimate where that red line is and where people break down, and try to keep them the right side. And there's a red line in your career, and sometimes you went over it, running up and down that
Yeah.
stupid mountain in front of Mo that I wouldn't even let Mo run up. But you did it every blooming day, and I think stupid. No one should be doing that.
I jogged
And
up it. I jogged up. For clarity, when I first went there, the first time that I went there, Thommo, we were sat around the dining table in the lycée, and one of the other athletes said to me, we usually run up that, but you couldn't do it because a girl couldn't do it. So that's why I ran up it every day,
Oh, right.
because you couldn't really challenge me like that.
Mo
But
and
yeah.
Moomin Geely, Mo and Moomin Geely tried to get down there, like two what's in a chance. It was just ridiculous. They couldn't get down. They couldn't walk down, so they were banned from going up it. But clever clogs there. She was up and down like a mountain bloody goat. She was. Anyway, I go back to the point that I wouldn't have set Mo the volume and intensity of training he did when he left the UK. So if he'd stayed here, he wouldn't have won the medals he did get. But he went into a new regime, and he worked much harder than he ever had done in the UK, and got just rewards for it. But I couldn't have set that. I wouldn't have set that intensity of training. So I think that makes me soft. But there you go.
No, well, okay. I come from a different angle though with that, Alan, because I think when you come to that apathetic side that you're talking about, you know as well as I do, one of our greatest moments together was Kew Gardens and making the Olympics in 2021, and we had a moment 8-9 weeks before that race where everything was going well in training. I was on that nice marathon build-up curve, and we knew I had a child coming roughly the week of the race, and the last you heard from me was, I'm moving house. And then the next thing, I'm ringing you from a hospital bed because I've had quite a nasty accident with my hand. And in my head, I'm getting a bit emotional thinking about it, but in my head, like, all I could think of was two things. Was like, one, because it was my dad that reversed the van, and I wanted him to know it's not his fault. And the second one, I felt like I'd let you down, not because you put this expectation on me, it's because I know how much emotion and you put into me as an athlete, and I always, you and Mark talk about match the effort of the athlete when it comes to the input, and you put so much into me, and I thought I've messed up, all that effort you're putting in and we're putting in, I've messed up. And I remember ringing you just very upset, going, I don't know what to say. I'm sat in a hospital bed. I've just completely smashed my hand. And any athlete says at that point, it's all over. It's done. You just throw everything out the pram. And do you remember what you said to me? Is the first question. Do you remember what you said? I was probably
crying. I don't know. I don't remember.
No, yeah. Your words were, and I always remember it. You said, "Thommo, no decisions should be made in a pub or in a hospital." And I thought,
I'm in trouble,
right.
aren't I?
I need to. Well, and you're right. And it was like you managed to blend humour with emotional support and we're not writing this off all in one sentence. And your ability to do that so many times in my career was incredible. Mm-hmm. And you nailed it. And I thought, right, yeah, you're right. The only thing we need to do now is get this operation done and get out of here. And then for those next 2-3 weeks where it was a bit undecided where we were going to go, all you did was, you didn't say, look, come on, we've got to get out the door, because like you've said, you didn't want to over push, but at the same time you weren't dismissing, and you were enabling me to say, it's your risk to take based on the circumstances, and I will support you every step of the way. And you balanced it absolutely brilliantly of the risk reward to getting out the door earlier and winning that Olympic trials and successfully having a kid that week. That was all massively created in that, from the accident, being in the hospital over the next 2-3 weeks, and how you managed me and handled me. And I think, so when you say I don't push, that pushing people is I think you're doing yourself injustice of how well you balance all the different equations and all the different things to get the outcome. And without your support in that 2-3 week period, it never would have happened. That absolutely never went.
It was a critical moment, and we got through it somehow. But all I remember is just dealing with it on a day-by-day basis. This is where we are. Mm-hmm. Let's make the most sensible decision. I think at one stage you were running around with your hand up in the air, weren't you? Is that not right? You were running around like that?
Yeah. I was just, people thought I was asking them all questions. Like, can I ask? Yeah. No, it was, because it was an open wound. The risk of infection was, like the doc said, like, the surgeon said, you get this infected, it's a bit of a disaster, because that was the risk of it, of sweat, and it like I say, it was an open wound that was healing. But yeah.
So you got through it, and that's gold, isn't it? One day at a time, just do what you can and handle that. Alan, do you remember in 2000?
It wasn't what?
There was no plan, like from.
Yeah.
There was no 7 weeks.
Day by day.
Yeah. Sorry, Paula.
Just see what you could do. No, it's all right. I was just going to say, on that same lines of, like, you do what you can do. Do you remember in 2008 when we, before we went out to Macau for the holding camp before the Beijing Olympics, and I'd had a stress fracture in my femur, and the team had been following it through, and we went down to London, and they scanned it, and they basically couldn't tell me. They could tell me it had healed, but they couldn't say whether it had healed strongly enough to race a marathon on it. And so we had to make the decision, and they made me sign a piece of paper and a disclaimer. Do you remember that? It was at my own risk that I was running on.
Oh, yes. Yeah,
I just remember your words. Yeah, I just remember your words to me, because I asked them the question. I said, well, how bad is the risk? Like, what could happen? They said, well, you could refracture it all the way through. And I said, well, would I not feel that? And they said, oh, yeah, it would hurt you. So then I remember just signing the paper and just getting on with it. And I just remember your words to me going out. You will stop if it hurts, won't you?
Yeah. I've always had a sense of humour. And anybody who's going to ask you that question, yeah. I don't really want to go back through the memories of your injuries. There was one day, I hesitate to say, I live in Somerset. Paul has called a meeting 9 o'clock at Northwick Park at Harrow. So I have to set off before I go to bed. So I'm at the crack of dawn, drive to Harrow, Tuesday morning, 9 o'clock. Medical team, Paul Dijkstra, Neil Black, Mr. Collins, Gary was there. They look at Paula's toe. So Tuesday morning. I got home on Thursday night. I spent 2 days in Munich with the same pair of underpants. I left those underpants in Munich. They're now using it to produce a different strain of penicillin. we go out there. She says to me, what a Wolfart's going to do is either going to inject it, or he's going to radiate it, or he's going to hit it with a hammer. And he did all three. We had to buy Wellington boots and cut the toes out. It was just, and I'm sitting in a hotel thinking, someone smells around here, and it's me. I could explain to the missus. I went to a meeting 9 o'clock on Tuesday, come home on Thursday night in a pair of Luftwaffe pants or something. I don't know what I had on, but it was ridiculous. So I really, if we can just...
But the toe did get better. Toe did get better, and we did win the world champs that year.
Where was that? Where was the world champs that year?
Was it not Helsinki?
Where was the world championship? Helsinki. Oh, that's
Helsinki.
I was at the feed station.
2005 was Helsinki.
Yeah.
Yes, you were. Yeah, because Alan was in charge of the very critical information. Because I knew I was going to not do it wrong like I had done in Edmonton. I was going to run hard and run away. So Alan only had one job, and that was to get me my bottles and to tell me how big the gap was behind me, which he did perfectly. Right. To the extent of I basically can't see anyone. That's it.
No, okay, but I was on the telephone back to the UK because they could see on the telly how far the gap was behind you. I couldn't. There was a pub just across the road, and every time you disappeared out on a different lap, I went in the pub and phoned back to the UK to say, how far she's in front now? And then I come across, you're 300 yards in front, Paula. Is she? So yeah, it was back in the UK. They were telling me what the gap was, and I was telling you I couldn't see. It wasn't just a pub. There was a pub in a petrol station.
And it was 4 or 5 laps.
Yeah, and we decided beforehand.
A pub and a petrol station.
No, before the race, we decided that we thought you could run about 2:21 on that course on that day, and the rest couldn't. So if you set off at that speed, the rest would get dropped. And eventually it worked, didn't it? It was a simple plan. Run faster than the others can.
Yeah, it did.
I don't know why we didn't use it more often,
yeah,
to be honest.
It was a very simple plan.
Seems simple. Yeah.
I think we tried, but perhaps it was a case of running as fast as you can and it not being fast enough. But we definitely did try. No, well, we did try to get there.
That's not my fault.
And it worked out. But one of the things, and you just alluded to it there, Alan, when you were talking about that time. No, it's not. But one of the problems now, not one of the problems, one of the issues that athletes face, I think a lot more, as you just mentioned there, you had to go across the road to the pub to call back to the UK. Because mobile phones that people are attached to and all of the social media pressures were not really around then. And I have to say, when I look back at some of the difficult times, they were undoubtedly easier because social media wasn't about. And that is something that athletes have to deal with now as a pressure. And it's probably something that you're aware of in coaches of athletes in terms of there's a positive, but there's also more expectation. And there is certainly more armchair critics out there who can come back and just destroy an athlete.
Yeah. I don't do any social media. Okay, Thommo ran in a 10k race in Manchester that was only streamed on Facebook. I joined, and I had so many pillocks wanting to be my friend by 3 days later that I signed out and I've never been back. So I don't do any social media, and it's just it's poison. And it just
but you do podcasts, right? You're going to listen to the podcast.
I'm not going to listen to this. I know what was said and what wasn't said, and we haven't helped anybody do anything. We might have amused ourselves and wasted away a morning of our lives. Very little else. In fact, I don't know why you do these podcasts.
No.
Who the hell's going to want to...
Well, Alan, so tell us what you're doing for running now, because you're running a lot more than me at the moment because of my broken toe. But what are you up to now in terms of your own running?
Well, I run on the treadmill because if I go outside, people laugh. When you get older, my face has gone thin, but it's just because the fat has dropped, and it's so bad that if I undo my belt, my ankles swell. So I have to be when I go outside, I look like a very silly person trying to jog, a very old silly person. So I do it in the comfort of my garage, but it's very difficult. And it's my birthday next week, and I've just got a new bigger set of dumbbells. So I'm going to try and work on muscles now. That's what I'm doing. You asked a question.
Excellent.
I've given you the
We're going
answer.
to do a podcast later on, Alan. We're going to do a podcast on looking after the body as it ages and the different hormonal things that you can do and training things to balance that. So you're listening to that one. You can download that one. But before we let you go, can we ask, please, your top 3? You might be on it. Yeah, we'll use you as a guinea pig. Can we ask your top 3 tips for athletes out there listening? We have all abilities listening to the podcast. So they might just be getting ready for a local 5K or a park run, or they might be getting ready for a marathon or an ultra. Top 3 coaching tips, advice, the best things that they can do to coach themselves, help themselves.
Work out what the event requires and see how you can match yourself to the requirements as easily as possible or as closely as possible. No one can do that, but you ask for a tip, so just have a go and see if you can do that one. Second tip, don't start too.
Okay.
And third tip, make certain you've got food and drink at the finish. That's it. I'm a simple lad. That's it. That's all I've got.
Yeah. So go on, Thommo has a final question for you.
The question I want to ask you, Paul, Alan, to wrap up with, like you've been around the sport like as long as you have. For your first 5 miler in 57, how would you like to see running today sort of capture the youth, the heart and mind of the youth today, and how running connects with that future generations and potential elites or anyone going forward? How would you like to see that?
I'm a little bit despondent, to be honest, about that, because I think it's the sport's struggling on lots of fronts to remain as relevant as it was. I don't think it's going to be the same in 20, 40, 60 years' time, and I'm probably glad in a way I won't be here to see it. So that's not the answer you wanted, but that's the reality. That's the truth. It's changing, and I don't really like the way it changes. I know you can't. The world moves on, and everything's getting better supposedly, but the athletics in the bad old days was a lot more fun than it is now.
Alan, could you sum up in one sentence what makes running special?
It keeps you fit and healthy and allows you to eat and drink as nearly as much as you want, and you make some great friends while you're doing it.
Thank you so much, Alan. Lots to pick up on there. We did tell you it would be frank and honest, didn't we? But at the end of the day, extremely inspirational. And come on, Next Generation, he's basically laid it down to you there. So please prove that it's not a case of being despondent. That's just a bit of grumpy old Alan kicking in. And go and show him that running with the youth, because I see it regularly now. And actually, as this podcast drops, I will be standing out in the heat of Bastille Day, watching my son race in the under 15 national championships for France, and hopefully witnessing a lot of the young sport at its strongest and at its most beautiful. And it's just basically kids going after their dreams, and you have no idea where it's going to take you. So don't let Alan bring you down on that one. But thank you so much, Alan, for all the gems and for just being you and joining us there. Now, we are conscious that these have maybe gone on a little bit longer than intended, these podcast chats, so we haven't had as many listener questions as we used to do, but we absolutely will be building that in. We may even add in a special episode which will be just listener interaction and questions. So for this episode, Thommo, we had a question from Keith, and he said he's 42 and he completed the Belfast Marathon in 3:38.01. How realistic is it to get sub 3 hours, and how far is that away? Are we talking 2-3 marathons away or longer? Now, just for context, I did go back to him and ask how many marathons he'd already done to this point, and he said he did run 2 marathons before, but they were well spaced out in 2012 and 2019. So I think a little bit of the answer is perhaps there, is it? Do we think?
Well, I think the real question is how much training or running he's done in preparation for them. Yeah. I think he's Alan sort of alluded to it as well. When you're looking at what you need, look at what the event requires, and then look at what you're doing to match that requirement. And that's where you have to use a little bit of your own, where are you at now, and what would it take to run a 3-hour marathon? And we've talked a lot about 3-hour marathons does take a fair bit of running, a fair bit of structure, a fair bit of, I say a fair bit, a little bit of thought around 5k, 10k training mixed with threshold, mixed with longer runs. So it's more of a question of how much have you done to run 3 hours 38, which then compares to what it would take, a sub 3 hour training program would look like. So I would suggest having a look at a generic 3 hour program, and there's lots of them online. They're not all perfect, but just have an idea and then have a look at what you have done and kind of compare and contrast. And I think for me, that's probably that's going to hold most of your answers, because again, when you said you've run 2 marathons, I think for me, ironically, one of my fastest ever marathons was my first one. I could have still run a little bit quicker in my career if things had gone slightly differently, but the point is I got quite close to my max in my first one. What was your first marathon, Paula? What time did you run?
2:18:56.
So there you go. So you ran 2:18, went on to run 2:15. I ran 2:11, went on to 2:10. So I think how many marathons you run is some sort of the question, but I think it's more about what you've been doing.
But in fairness, though, Thommo, we were coming in at a highly trained state already.
That's my point,
and we were coming in to run hard. I think for Keith, my key points there would be, number one, where can you make up that time? So you're talking about, 40 minutes, say, give or take a minute or so. And I think that is entirely possible. It is feasible. I think it's improving fueling. That's going to be key, and how well you're able to hydrate on the run and fuel with that. And I do think those change of pace ones, I think to break 3 hours, you have to be doing those consistent long runs at pace, and you have to be doing training within your week of training that is substantially quicker than 3 hour pace to make you feel more comfortable at that 3 hour pace. So you need to be including hill reps or fartleks. It doesn't have to be a track workout, but there has to be some faster pace stuff in there. And I think you're absolutely right. Jumping into 5Ks, 10Ks, 5 milers and racing those and getting quicker sees big rewards. Everybody that I've kind of helped to break through that 3 hours, it's been not by increasing mileage, but by increasing the pace of the key runs and kind of keeping the mileage balance the same across the week. So that would be my big advice. And good luck, Keith.
Yeah.
And please let us know when you do it.
And I think just to make a clarity of point note, we haven't sort of paid attention to 42 because I don't think it's relevant in that sense. It's more about the training, what you have done and what you can do. So just for transparency on that, because he did say that I'm 42, but I don't ignore
42
that.
is spring chicken for marathon.
Exactly.
I think Carlos Lopez was older than that, right? Or around that?
I'm not sure. Well, my PB was run at, I went to the Olympics at 41:42. Well, it was 10th at London Marathon at 43.
Just need to listen to your body a little bit more, Keith, in terms of rest and recovery and that hydration and fueling. So now should we move on to the honours board? And so thank you so much for everybody that is sending in the messages and sending in their shout outs to go up on the honours board. For this week, we have Mark, who finally got into London via the ballot after 20 years of trying. That motto out there to everybody still trying, keep trying.
That's impressive. I mean, ironically, with the way the odds are, like, should be a one in every 50 to 1 shot, so every 50 years or something crazy. Anyway, but that's more today with the number of people applying. So Maria completed the 4x4x48 Goggins and did it with her baby in a pram, which is effectively 4 miles every 4 hours over 48 hours. So really well done. It makes me think I need to do that with George myself, but with the pram we've got, is no chance. But congratulations, Maria. That's fantastic.
Brilliant. Well done, Maria. And Jade has signed up for the Manchester Marathon. She had never run a step until a year ago. She has committed to that. So we will be cheering you on all the way to Manchester, Jade.
Yes. Shout out to Birkenhead Park Running Club, especially all those doing the Couch to 5K. Hi, guys. And yes, big shout out to all of you guys, and hope you have a lot of fun, which I'm sure you do amongst yourselves and the lovely community you have there.
A shout out to Jane, who got a PB in the Berlin Marathon and backed that up with another PB for her 10K. So really raking in those PBs. Keep that up, Jane. Well done.
Louise started running in 2023 and now has completed the Mid Sussex Marathon. Well done. I mean, that's really, really well done. Hopefully you've inspired not just yourself to keep going, but others to do the same thing. So congratulations and well done for that.
Well done, Louise. And to Lucy, who has signed up for a 50-mile ultramarathon at the end of August. Wow, that's coming up soon now, Lucy. So we're thinking of you. Hope the training's going well and good luck out there.
To Andy and his mate Mario, who meet every Saturday to run along Bournemouth Beach. You haven't said a time, so I can't let everyone else know to join you and increase the size of your group. So if you want me to say a time that you read regularly, get back in touch. But shout out to Andy and Mario on your Saturday long run along Bournemouth Beach.
Thank you so much to everyone for getting in contact with us. Please don't forget that you can keep those emails coming into us at paulasrunclub@momentumbroadcast.co.uk. You can send them on the WhatsApp number, that's +44 756 474 7914, and you can send them in on Instagram and X and TikTok as well. So thank you so much for being a part of this community. That is just about all that we have got time for. We will be dropping next Monday. I will be updating you on how RAF gets on, and I will actually be over in the UK then going through the celebrations of Stephen Cram's 40-year anniversary from his record-breaking spree back in 1985, and also building up to the anniversary games, which we're all excited about.
Yes, very much so. It's the summer is well and truly here, and it's good. You know what? It's good to be back. I know we're 3 episodes in, and it's just nice to start connecting and speaking to people. So please keep those messages coming in. We really do enjoy going through it, and Paula and I chat amongst ourselves, and just really enjoy hearing the enthusiasm and how well everyone's doing. So keep going, and see you next week.
See you next week.